another episode of Drafters TV. I'm Ben Hauver, and today I'm bringing you NFL Week 2 Snake Draft Strategy. This format appears to be growing in popularity, and I think that that's for good reason. It's fun, it's easy, and it's more intuitive for your average everyday fantasy player than a nuanced chess game that is salary cap DFS. Perhaps best of all is the clear-cut edge that still remains in this tournament. There's not too much content around it, so finding good content is hard to come by, and I think that that's what I can do here is provide that and help you find ways to exploit the edge in a new and growing DFS format. But first, guys, make sure you do drop a like on this video, and if you're feeling especially generous, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it more than you know. Speaking of subscribing, if you would like a chance to win a free ticket into the Drafters contest of your choice worth up to $5.50, whether that be a cash game or taking a shot at one of their weekly GPPs, all you have to do is subscribe to this YouTube channel and leave a comment below with your thoughts on the video and your Drafters username. Winners will be selected on next week's video, and we'll have some new content up each and every single week on this channel with giveaways included starting right now. Had 2 submissions on last week's video, so only 2 people, 50-50 shot. Somebody wins the ticket here. I've got the names open in a randomizer, and the winner is FF Bowler 300. This man might as well be a Drafters fantasy employee. They're basically paying him to watch these videos. He comments on every one. He's won countless tickets at this point. So shout out to you, FF Bowler. Use it well. I hope that you've used a lot of these tickets and drafted some solid teams, my man. Thanks for the continued support on these videos. Now let's break down this week 2 snake draft strategy. I've got 3 major points that I want to hit on today's video. The first is that if you're coming into this format as somebody who drafts a lot of redraft and or best ball teams, I think that something that can be difficult to quickly adjust to is that the weekly player valuations differ so vastly from the ADP expectations that we've been familiarizing ourselves with for months on end. A prime example of what I'm talking about in week 2 would be Amari Cooper, who in my opinion is a top 5 wide receiver target on the week. Seasoned best ball drafters may have a visceral reaction to the thought of clicking the draft button on somebody like Amari Cooper ahead of a player like Tyreek Hill, for example. However, Cooper just flat out projects better this week. It doesn't matter that he got drafted a full 2 rounds later in August best ball drafts. All that matters is that Amari Cooper's 10 target floor in the premier fantasy game of the week, Atlanta at Dallas, has a 53-point over under, and he has a very good shot to replicate the awesome production that he saw in week 1. This is a game that we could see both offenses going back and forth in a stone cold shootout. Tyreek Hill is a strong play, just not as strong of a play as Amari Cooper, and I don't think that very many people are going to be comfortable selecting Cooper ahead of Hill. If you can get yourself to a point where you feel comfortable with that, I think that you will have a strong edge. Another example of this would be how I'm handling the 101 pick this week. It sounds almost blasphemous to say, but no, if I land the 101 pick, I'm not taking Christian McCaffrey. I think that the clear-cut best running back play on the slate this week is Ezekiel Elliott, and that he should be the first overall pick in any Week 2 snake draft format. I just mentioned how appealing this Cowboys game, and Zeke is the belle of the ball, home favorite 3-down running back in the week's highest totaled game of the slate. He's got a 20-touch floor and a 25 to 30-touch expectation. I don't put much stock into defensive matchup this early in the season, but from a personnel standpoint, the Bucs defense, which CMC will be going up against, is much more imposing than what Zeke will be looking at, going up against Atlanta. And I also think that this new Carolina offense under Matt Rule and Joe Brady is skewing in a direction that favors deep passing more so than the dink and dunk offense in 2019 that birthed CMC's historic season. Of course, I also know that, we can't just overreact to a small sample size of the things that happen in week 1. CMC, still a very strong play. I would expect him to average well above the 4 targets that he saw in week 1, on a weekly basis. He only saw 4 targets or less twice in all of 2019. Christian McCaffrey, just in case you're wondering, is my 3rd ranked running back play on the slate in this format. Still a phenomenal pick, but I would rather have both Zeke and Alvin Kamara in light of the Michael Thomas injury ahead of him. The second point that I want to hit on right now is the importance of incorporating Vegas totals into your process for these snake drafts. This is going to seem like a very elementary idea for experienced DFS best players, but I largely believe that season-long and best ball drafters rarely use this aspect of analysis in their process. Vegas lines and totals aren't perfect, but they're a great jumping off point, and they are a key component of projection models and a solid first step for evaluating potential game environment. If you look at the top 5 totals according to Vegas for week 2, it appears that the games that we're going to want to have a lot of exposure to are going to be Atlanta at Dallas, the total's 53, Baltimore at Houston, total of 50, Detroit at Green Bay, total of 49.5, New Orleans at Oakland, 49.5 as well, and then finally Minnesota at Indianapolis, 48.5. And then from a implied team total perspective, the Bucks have the second highest total on the week at 28.5, and the Chiefs have the fourth highest at 28. Looking at these games as fantasy-friendly scoring environments should put you where you need to be in terms of understanding which games and which teams make natural sense for stacking, and also it should give you an idea of players that may have higher than usual expectations in a given week. One way to translate that information into an actionable edge in these week 2 drafts is by identifying certain situations and players that may be available later in the draft than they should be. A couple examples of this in week 2 would be Aaron Jones and Marquise Brown. I have a few entries in the 4-team tournament draft on Drafters. I was able to land Hollywood Brown with my final pick in one of these, and for starters, he fit extremely well with Lamar Jackson, who I had on that team, which gives me an easy high upside stack. But also, the Ravens have the second highest implied team total on the slate, and they're going to be putting up major points against Houston. You could look at guys that I took Brown ahead of, such as Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Juju Smith-Schuster, to name a few, as guys that have equal, if not better, target projections than Brown, but they're projected to be in less appealing games with less scoring upside. Another example would be Aaron Jones, who, is a guy that handled only 54% of the running back touches in Green Bay for week 1, but after seeing 3 carries inside the 10-yard line last week and being tied for an NFL lead of 4 red zone targets as a home favorite running back with a game with the third highest total on the slate, I think Jones projects to be an extremely solid RB1. And, you're able to get him much later than you should, I think, as a surefire RB1 in these week 2 snake drafts. In one of the 4-man drafts, I was able to get him as my RB3, and that's just stealing money. I don't know what else to say. Now, the final point that I want to hit on in this video is that positional scarcity matters more in this format than it does even in season long or best ball. Take week 2, for example. Look at the tight end position, one that is always a relatively dry position with few viable plays on a week-to-week basis. In week 2, we've got George Kittle, who's highly questionable to play, which leaves us with, Kelsey and Andrews in absolute smash spots. Ertz, I think, is a tier below, but still extremely solid, and then what? A bunch of guys that could realistically see 5 targets or less and almost certainly will need to score a touchdown to help you out in the week. In best ball, if you don't take a top tight end, you may still be able to scoop 3 guys that cumulatively put up similar fantasy production over a full 17-week season. It's much harder to hit on that one guy in 1 week when you're looking outside of the top tier. So in these drafts, I'm looking to have a solid understanding of where the tier breaks off at each position before I even enter the draft, and then I'm focusing on landing guys ahead of the major tier drops. So, for example, getting a top 3 tight end over a solid wide receiver 2, even if that wide receiver 2 projects better in raw points, I think is a smart choice because there are strong wide receiver plays that you can find in the final round of the draft. There are not strong tight end plays that you can find in the final round of the draft. In week 2, I don't think that it's imperative to reach on a guy like, say, Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes over a top tier, running back wide receiver talent, because there's like 7 or 8 quarterbacks that I think are super strong plays. That being said, I do want to focus on getting my hands on one of the 3 guys that I do believe to be in the top tier after Jackson and Mahomes, which would be Dak Prescott and Matt Ryan in that loaded game, and then Kyler Murray bringing up the rear as my 5th quarterback on the week. Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, and Tom Brady are also viable options if you miss on the top 5. Running back remains a priority, as I think it always is, and getting one of the top 4 week 2 options will give you an automatic step up on the field. Zeke Elliott, Kamara, CMC, and Henry are my priority targets, with guys like Barkley, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Aaron Jones closely behind them. In terms of wide receiver, I think wide receiver is extremely deep this week, and from a roster construction standpoint, I can almost guarantee that I'll be waiting to fill out the wide receiver position in every draft that I can. Ideally, I will be using 2 2 of my final 3 picks at wide receiver wherever possible in these week 2 snake drafts. But what do you guys think about it? If you guys have any differing opinions on how to attack this format, let me know in the comment section below. Like I said at the top of the video, you can easily help me out by dropping a like and subscribing to the channel. I'll be doing, giveaways in each video to different drafters contests every week. So check back on Friday to see if you are that lucky person. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you on Friday.